Now I want everyone in this room to imagine being taken from your home without warning, taken to a different part of the country, not able to speak your native language, and unable to practice your own religion, all because you're accused of the crimes committed by an entirely different country. This was what it was like to be a Japanese American in the United States of America after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. But the fear and hatred towards these Japanese Americans began at the start of the 20th century. This started with only slight racism towards Japanese when Americans felt that they were taking their jobs. But they were seen as more of a threat than other nations because they had just won the Russia-Japanese War in 1905. This made them the most powerful Asian nation and a rising world power. And so now the first way that the American citizens were able to protest against Japan was in 1931 when Japan invaded Manchuria, which is now today China. But government action didn't take place until the Nanking Massacre of 1937, which was the mass rape and mass murder of the Chinese, which drove the United States, United Kingdom, and France to give loans to China in order to help prevent Japanese expansion. Now, in 1940, the Japanese invaded French Indochina, which the U.S. responded by taking all shipments and stopping all shipments to the United States except for oil, which was only seen as an unfriendly act by Japan. But now, in 1941, this was when oil shipments stopped as well, because they continued expansion into French Indochina and after the fall of France. This was seen as an act of war by the Japanese. So Japan continued these type of actions against America, and the Americans, they were enraged. But what really made the shift was the bombing of Pearl Harbor. The bombing of Pearl Harbor was an attack on U.S. naval base where in Hawaiian territories, which was paired with the attacks of U.S. territories such as Philippines, Guam, and Wake Islands, and allied territories such as Hong Kong, Singapore, and Malaya. This desperate need for justice came with the death of 2,403 Americans and the wounding of many others from an attack that was sparked with no warning, with no declaration of war, and was seen as a war crime. This was the moment where the United States was able to officially codify their racism towards Japanese Americans through legislation. We entered World War II, and after this came the Executive Order number 9066, signed by Franklin D. Roosevelt. This forced over 110,000 Japanese Americans to exit their homes in California, Oregon, and Washington to one of 10 camps closer to the middle of the United States. So the fact is that 70% of these people moved into these camps were American citizens. And you only needed to be as little as 1/16 Japanese to be put in a camp where you're constantly surrounded by guards and soldiers and enclosed in barbed wires. So this came different portrayals of Japanese Americans in culture, especially in propaganda. Many Americans feared that their neighbors were spies, that they needed to be cautious around them, and the Japanese were also depicted as rat-faced evil enemies in books, television, media, and movies. They're portrayed as rats because it's easy to kill. They're not human, so obviously it's easy to kill them. So this came into full swing in 1944 with an opinion poll that showed that 13% of American public believed in the complete extermination of the Japanese. So this detainment is seen as a complete contrast to our founding principles of democracy. And we And the laws instated during their detainment was also seen as the laws enacted were also against the Constitution. For example, the Shinto religion was prohibited from being practiced in these camps, which is against freedom of religion. And also the FBI frequently searched Japanese American homes. And this is against no search and seizure without a warrant. Now, despite the obvious violations of even just the Bill of Rights, there was not a single vote of opposition in Congress to this order, and was upheld as constitutional by the Supreme Court at this time. This order emerged from an atmosphere of fear and anger towards Japan, and also was justified as a military necessity to combat our panic towards national security. But today we see that it was based on racial prejudice, war hysteria, and a failure on the part of American leaders to protect the rights of citizens. Thank you.